Nikolai Andreevich Rimsky-Korsakov was born in March 18, 1844 in Tikhvin. Tikhvin is located on both banks of the Tikhvin River in the east of the oblast, 120 miles east of St. Petersburg. Korsakov's daddy worked for the Russian government and retired in his late 30s. His mom was an intelligent and well-educated woman. Korsakov describes in his autobiography that he had a solitary childhood. When he was born, his brother, much older than him, was a Navy lieutenant. His dad was past his 60s and his mother in her 40s. No one in his family was a professional musician, but all the adults played and sang to some extent. In his autobiography, Korsakov says that in Tikhvin no classical music could be heard. Sometimes he would play 4/8-hand things with Bredskin's family, but nothing more than that. Korsakov was greatly influenced by folk and Oriental music. That was possible thanks to his engagement at the age of 12 in the Marine Corps at St. Petersburg, in which he spent summer with his lieutenant brother. Korsakov, while in the Navy, became a member of the Mighty Handful, a group of five Russian composers who worked together to create a distinctive Russian classical music. The group was composed by Maily Balakirev, the leader, Cesar Kri, Mussorgsky, Alexander Borodin, and Korsakov. Korsakov worshipped Balakirev. He studied composition under his guidance, and that was when he realized that his mentor was wrong, as Balakirev tried to make his pupils a copy of himself. Balakirev disliked Bach, and for this reason, Korsakov had not known how important Bach was. In his words, he says, I had no idea of the historical evolution of the civilized world's music and had not realized that all modern music owed everything to Bach. From this time in his life, he was regarded as a traitor by his former Russian acquaintances, in special by Balakirev. Many Russians' leading modern composers were pupils of Rimsky-Korsakov. The list includes Lyarov, Ariansky, Ivanov, Rachmaninoff, Cherubin, Glazunov, Widow, Tenevin, Ekmenko, and Stravinsky. Korsakov was an orchestration master. He is remembered today for such lively works as The Flight of the Bumblebee, Scheherazade, and Capricho Español. Korsakov died in June 21, 1908 in Lubansk, Russia. Now I'm going to talk about Scheherazade. Scheherazade is a symphonic suite composed in 1888, and it is based on 1001 Nights, also known as the Arabian Nights. The Sultan Shahryar, convinced of the purity and faithfulness of women, vowed to execute each of his wives after the first night. But the Sultana Scheherazade saved her own life by interesting him in the tales that she told him through 1001 Nights. Impelled by curiosity, the Sultan continually put off her execution, and at last entirely abandoned his sanguinary resolve. Scheherazade is divided into four movements. First, the Sea and Sinbad's ship. Second, the story of the Prince Kalantar. Third, the young prince and princess. And fourth movement, Festival at Baghdad, the sea. The ship breaks against a cliff surmounted by a bronze horseman. The work is scored for an orchestra consisting of 2 flutes and piccolo, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets, 2 bassons, 4 horns, 2 trumpets, 3 trombones, montuba, timpani, bass drum, snare drum, cymbals, triangle, tambourine, tam-tam, harp, violins, violas, cellos, and basses. Here, I will focus on the first 3 movements. Movement 1. The sea and Sinbad ship presents the 2 principal characters, the Sultana Scheherazade and the Sultan Shahryar. One interesting thing is that Korsakov uses the whole tone scale multiple times throughout the piece, as you see. The following theme represents the Sultan Shahryar, and it is built in the key of E minor. It also uses 4 notes of the whole tone scale, E, D, C, B flat, with A sharp instead of B flat. The next theme is the theme that represents the Sultana Scheherazade. This theme is in A minor. This movement is a variation of the Sultan and Sultana themes, which can also be interpreted as a dialogue between them. Other moments in the piece, we can hear the waves of the ocean represented by juxtapositions of the 2 principal themes presented before. In the following, you can hear that. Movement 2. The story of the Prince Calendar. When Korsakov composed this movement, he had the idea of a calendar prince. In the knights, there are 3 calendar princes. However, we cannot be sure of which calendar prince's story Korsakov had in mind. Second movement is in B minor. This movement follows a type of ternary theme and variation, and is described as a fantastic narrative. It starts with Scheherazade theme or theme 2 introduced by the violin in movement 1. This time it is also introduced by the violin, but it is in the key of B minor and not A minor. Korsakov used this theme multiple times played by different instruments throughout this movement. Movement 3. The Young Prince and Princess. Not much is known about what inspired Korsakov to compose this movement. However, love is a common subject in the Arabian Nights, which could be the inspiration of Korsakov. This movement starts with an andatina quasi allegretto. This movement is in G minor, which is also the only major key that starts a movement in this piece. Korsakov presents the theme. On the clarinet and repeats it many times throughout this movement played by different instruments. This movement is a ternary theme and variation, with playful themes exploring the woodwinds. Now I'm gonna talk about some challenge passages for the conductor. Korsakov presents a piece that has lots of soloist moments that require a considerable amount of attention from the conductor. With that said, the conductor needs to pay attention to the types of fermatas that Korsakov uses. After that, the conductor has to decide how they are going to be performed to give a clear gesture for the musicians. A second aspect that the conductor has to point out are the different characters that Korsakov creates throughout Scheherazade. First, the Sultan theme that repeats multiple times, as well as the Sultana theme. The conductor needs to explore the different colors and the different characters within each repetition that happens with each different orchestration. For example, in the second movement where wind trade offs the solos very freely, the conductor has to be careful with all the gestures related to the compound meters that happens in the piece. A firm gesture has to be given. In the following example, you can see how the quarter note is used to lead a simple meter to a compound meter. Another element that I would like to cover here is the joint phrases. Whenever Korsakov uses multiple instruments sharing excerpts of the same phrase, the conductor needs to bring the attention of the musicians by showing them how they share the same musical phrasing. In the following example, you can see how Korsakov relates each phrase from the woodwinds to the strings. Korsakov uses very well the orchestra to bring some passages out more, and other times he uses very soft dynamics. Hence, a conductor has to focus in on the dynamic contrast. In the following example, you can see how Korsakov goes gradually from a soft dynamic, using a more dense orchestration with additional notes in every repetition of the phrase, plus naturale rondo to fortissimo, ending the second movement. Here he also uses juxtaposition of the phrases. As you can see, he uses the theme 1 in contrast with the theme 2 presented in the first movement, but only a few excerpts, and he keeps repeating it over and over, adding more and more notes with the crescendo until the end.